Do we know where Chase is? He's online? Okay. It's my pleasure to call to order the Peoria Public School Board of Education meeting for May 9th to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Costick. Mr. Kloss.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Dr. Ranking. Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mrs. Ross. President Wilson.
Here.
We have 7 present.
Thank you. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to announcements, we will start with Mr. Mike Murphy and go in order.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations to Woodruff culinary students. The Woodruff restaurant management team took home 10th place at the Pro State Invitational Nationals competition this past weekend in Washington, D.C., and that is truly a phenomenal accomplishment. Congratulations. Congratulations to these hardworking students and their instructors, Chef Yeti and Chef Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Do I need to read Chase?
Yes,
Chase, do you
please.
have yours? No, he doesn't. Okay, then I'll read for him. High school graduations. Our Peoria Public Schools high school graduation ceremonies will be held on Saturday, May 21st. The times of each ceremony are as follows: 11 a.m. for Peoria High School, 2 p.m. for Manual High School, 4 p.m. for Richwoods High School. We can't wait to celebrate all the accomplishments for the class of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Mayor's Summer Youth Program. Application deadline to be in the 2022 Mayor's Youth Program this summer is approaching fast. Peoria Public Schools high school students are encouraged to apply to this great collaborative program with the Peoria Mayor, Rita Ali, and the City of Peoria Public Works Department, which will provide valuable work experience and a paycheck to students during the summer months. The deadline to apply is May 13th. Applications will be available for pickup at your high school counselor's office or the district administration building. Please return your application to your high school counselor or to the administration office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. It's funny. Congratulations to you, Mr. Shaw. Congratulations to our own Doug Shaw, who has been inducted into the Management Information Systems Hall of Fame at the University of Illinois, Springfield. Shaw earned his master's degree in MIS and a graduate certificate in Business Process Management from UIS. Shaw is currently a business process specialist in information technology, risk management at Caterpillar Incorporated, has spent over a quarter century as an IT professional for Caterpillar. He also has served as an adjunct lecturer in MIS for UIS for 20 years. Let's give a round of applause for Mr. Shaw.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
District Championship Speech Tournament. The Middle School Championship Speech Tournament is being held from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 14th at Manual High School. Volunteers are still needed to round out the judges' spots for the tournament. Please go to tinyurl.com/Peoria Speech to sign up for the volunteer judge. That's tinyurl.com/Peoria Speech to to sign up for the volunteer judge.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Knoxville graduates. Knoxville Center graduating students were honored at the KCSS 2022 Senior Breakfast last month. Congratulations to these graduates on another year of successful gains, and kudos to board members Ms. Kostick and Mr. Murphy for being in attendance at the breakfast.
Thank you.
Peace Plays in Peoria concert rescheduled date. The Peace Plays in Peoria concert from last month was rescheduled due to inclement weather. The new concert date is Monday, May 16th, starting at 11:30 a.m. at the exterior of the Peoria County Courthouse. This free concert promoting community peace is brought to you by the bands, choirs, and orchestras of Peoria High School, Manual High School, Richwoods High School, Rolling Acres Middle School, and Glen Oak Community Learning Center. We look forward to seeing you at the concert.
Thank you.
Good evening, Staff Appreciation Days. Last week, we celebrated our district teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week and our cafeteria staff for National School Lunch Hero Day. Don't forget to show your appreciation to our campus safety officers on Tuesday for School Resource Officer Appreciation Day, and to our school nurses Wednesday for School Nurse Appreciation Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kostick. I would also like to just say we have two poster boards. We have one done from the students at Knoxville Center for the Student Success, and we have manual board that our students at Manual did. A phenomenal job on both of those. Next, we have Student Showcase. White Rose Society Essay Contest winner, Nahaven Stringer, from Principal of Roosevelt, Laura Rogers.
Good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. I'd like to begin by introducing our teacher, 8th grade English Language Arts teacher, Sarah Lynn, and 8th grader, Nahaven Stringer. The White Rose Essay Contest is named in honor of the original White Rose Society, a group of university students in Munich, Germany, who united to call the German people to oppose the Nazi oppression and inhumanity through an underground newspaper and leaflet campaign. The society, which chose the white rose as its symbol to represent purity in the face of evil, was originally inspired to speak out in opposition to Nazi eugenics and euthanasia programs. Students were asked to research, in Mrs. Lynn's class, the history of a specific child or youth who was caught in or witnessed the events of the Holocaust in Europe, and describe how learning about the Holocaust through the personal story of this one individual makes the Holocaust more meaningful. Nahaven Stringer won first place out of 75 submissions in Peoria area. And here's Nahaven to talk a little bit about her piece.
Okay. I researched more about Elie Wiesel after class. The novel Night was written by Elie Wiesel. I had a deep understanding of tragedy of the Holocaust. This was a little bit from my paper. I have learned a lot about the Holocaust, but I think one thing that has struck me the most is Elie Wiesel's speech on indifference. I had heard the word, but I had learned the true meaning of it while studying the Holocaust. I had never thought about how much indifference there is in the world today. It made me realize that the Holocaust could have been prevented if someone would have spoken up and fought for what was right. It makes me think about how much I practice indifference in my own life and how I need to stand up and speak out when I see something that is not right, no matter how scared I am, so something this tragic will never happen again.
Awesome. Great job. Is the parents of Nahaven Stringer in here today? I'd just like to give you a round of applause, sir. Thank you. Next, we have district presentation, 2021-2022 budget amendment, Mick Willis and Carly Eman.
Good evening, board members. I'm here to share, along with Mick Willis, the 21-22 amended budget. And our team is Mick Willis and Carla Eman right now. Still looking for more members.
Desperately seeking Susan.
Yeah. So to start with, we like to go through kind of the requirements for adopting a budget. So we'll have our public notice, and then we need to have the budget on display then for 30 days, starting with May 10th. And then we plan to have the public hearing June 13th with the board adopting it on the 13th. Right now, we're looking at revenues in the $340 million and expenditures in the $339 million area there. Okay, Mick will be handling most of this, but these are the key changes reflected in the amendment budget, and I'll go ahead and start there at the bottom with the grant changes. And just had a couple comments there. The reason that we do this amendment is there's factors we didn't know about when the original budget was established and approved, and grants kind of impact that quite a bit. We had some ed fund amounts that did need to be moved over to capital projects because of the type of grants that we were working on, where we're actually working in the buildings. It's not just the Fund 10 grants anymore. And then also, the grant years just often don't match our fiscal year. It used to be that you could depend on, July 1 is when the grant starts, June 30th or August 31st is when it ends, and so you had grant season. Grant season was like May, and then my killer month of June to get everything ready. Well, everything's changed now. We have grants that end January 31st. We have grants that end September 30th. So it's just kind of all over the place. So you do the best you can at this moment in time with your projections, and then later in the year, we do this amendment to reflect all the changes and the new grants. And I'll let Mick go ahead and kind of take over the other areas on there.
In terms of the remainder of our operating revenue, we're seeing some slight positive trends, the first of which is evidence-based funding. About a month or so ago, ISB notified us that there were some corrections to funding formula amounts dating back to our first year of evidence-based funding. The long and short of that adjustment is that we were notified that we'd be receiving $1.2 million more this year. It was a one-time adjustment going back to the inception of our evidence-based funding program. So that $1.2 million we won't see every single year in terms of an additional increase, but it was a nice plus for the 21-22 year. Corporate personal property replacement taxes are trending at this point higher for the year, so that's budgeted about $4 million higher than the original budget. As you know, that's a revenue source that ebbs and flows generally. If you have a real good year, the following year is not quite so good. So right now we're enjoying that positive trend. For the very first time in 5 years, our assessed value has not decreased. It did not increase much, but the significant piece is that it stopped going down. It stopped trending down, and it basically is flat at this point. So we're hoping in the next couple of years that begins to trend up. County facility sales tax right now is trending a little bit higher than what we budgeted, so we've made an adjustment for that as well. And if we go to the next slide, toward the bottom of the page on the right where it says revenues over or under expenditures, we're projecting operating revenue at $2.3 million more than operating expenses. When we adopted our budget originally, that number was about $1 million. and that 1.2 million additional from the state that that we'll receive due to that correction is basically what that goodie is. If we flip to the very next page and we look at our non-operating budget, very similar to the budget we adopted in September, where we have a variety of revenue sources. Those pay for bonds, building improvements, life safety improvements, and there are a couple of places on that page where we sold bonds and we're spending those bonds down. But at this point, that page is pretty similar to our non-operating budget adopted back in September.
On this slide just shows the breakdown that we like to show every year of the operating fund revenues. You can kind of see where property taxes fall in compared to the evidence-based funding. And then also how you see the federal sources has kind of expanded a bit. And that's always good news. That means we're doing pretty well with grants with Susan Gersnich and others as we work on trying to bring in additional revenue for the district. And then kind of sliding over to the expense side. And then as we know, salaries and benefits do take up most of the budget. But you would also see, again, because of grants, that the capital outlay was able to increase a bit. We were doing a little bit more in that area. And then supplies and materials, a little expansion there.
In terms of next steps, we'll put a copy of our amended budget at the receptionist desk. We'll also post a copy of it on our website in June. When we have the loan board meeting in June, we'll have a public hearing, as we always do, right before budget adoption, and then we'll request that you approve the amended budget for 2021-22 later in that agenda. That's a quick overview. If you would be interested in receiving a full copy of the budget document, let us know and we can send that out to you. But it'll be on the website as well, and then at the receptionist desk as well. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer any of those.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Thank you, Ms. Eamon. Any questions? Mr. Shaw?
What year are we with the county facility sales tax?
We presented that to voters November of 2016.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Question.
Ms. Ross?
Relating to what he just asked, what is the average for this year from the county facility sales tax?
We're receiving about 350. Actually, it's about 400,000. It averages out to be about 400,000 per month.
Per month.
Per month. We're estimating 4.8 million this year. Initially, we estimated 3.8 million, which was closer to last year's level, but over the last year, it's really picked up.
Really trended higher than we expected.
I didn't hear what you said.
It really trended higher than what we originally had expected, especially going through COVID.
Awesome. Thank you. Next district presentation will be K through 4 mathematics curriculum adoption by Tracy Doneff, curriculum coordinator.
Good evening, President Wilson, Vice President Ross, members of the Board of Education. It is my privilege to talk to you this evening and represent our kindergarten through 4th grade students and teachers in Peoria Public Schools. I'm going to be talking to you this evening about our K-4 math curriculum resource adoption. So as a reminder of our process, this is just an overview of our renewal plan. Last year, almost this exact date, I came to you requesting an adoption for middle school math. We started with middle school math because our district focus was Algebra I Readiness, and we wanted to make sure we started with the core group of teachers that were most impacted. So we started with them. We got that adoption all running this year. In March, I came to you asking for high school math adoption to renew their resources and make sure they were up to date with their mathematical resources for students. And today I'm coming to you to finish out the group of K-12 students in Peoria Public Schools on behalf of our kindergarten through fourth grade students and teachers to ask for an adoption for that group. So we've purchased a lot of materials. Why are we doing this now? Well, there are many reasons. One, again, we're working toward increasing Algebra I readiness for our students in the district. We are also working to look for a resource that aligns with our district math vision. And we're going to be sharing that math vision statement with you a little bit later this evening when TNTP presents. We also have been using, our current program is Eureka Math. That has been used for multiple years. I don't have an exact number, but I can tell you that the copyright date on the materials that some of our teachers have been using, say 2013 on them. And it's time for some updates and improvements to the resources that they've been using. We have federal ESSER III funding that's available and budgeted for this specific purpose. And finally, because our teachers have expressed a great interest in finding instructional resources with differentiated levels of student support, with technology pieces and at-home connections that our current program simply doesn't have. So here's our timeline of the work that was done. Back in December, I met with a group of teachers on a committee to talk about what are the district's needs in K-4 math, and let's look at some resources that we might consider piloting and evaluate them. We did select 2 resources in January based on the review of those teachers and their work, as well as the Ed Reports reviews. They received professional development and began the process in February, completed the process in April. And in April, we met to discuss their pilot experiences. They collaborated with each other, and they completed a survey, as well as parents completed a survey at that time in order to evaluate the programs. And now today, I'm coming to you to request board approval for our K-4 math adoption from all the work done in the last few months. These are the teachers that were part of this committee, and there were 28 amazing teachers, some of them are here with us this evening, who dedicated hours of time. Their students had to learn something brand new, and they were super excited about it, actually. And I can't thank them enough for their hard work. So you can see here by this list that we have teachers representing schools across the district: Franklin, Roosevelt, Harrison, Maud Sanders, Glen Oak, C.T. Vivian, Whittier, Tree-Win, Lincoln, Keller, and Northmore. So we have a great variety of buildings and great variety of grade levels represented. So based on their work, I am coming to you to recommend the purchase of iReady Classroom Mathematics for our K-4 students in the district. Our iReady Classroom Mathematics program consists of the 3 pieces you see there. On the left, you'll see a picture of the student workbook. So this program has a book for students to write in that they can complete problems in, take home for extra practice with sample problems within it, and bring back to school. Some teachers have been having students use them with clipboards and tearing out the pages, but that is a big improvement. In the middle, you see a tub of manipulatives. iReady Classroom Mathematics partners with Hand to Mind, which is a mathematics manipulative company. And they have tubs that align with the resources to teach the lessons within iReady Classroom Mathematics. Then on the right, you'll see a digital platform. There is a student component to the digital resources where there's math games and activities that students can do to extend their learning in the lessons, as well as a multitude of teacher resources to help teachers differentiate their instruction and meet kids where they're at. Now, this recommendation comes to you from a lot of work that we did to review the different programs that we piloted. We piloted iReady Classroom Mathematics, and the other program that we piloted that we decided not to move forward with was Reveal Math from McGraw-Hill. This is the Ed Reports review of iReady Classroom Mathematics. Ed Reports is a collaboration of educators who do the research and complete reports on different areas. The first area they look at is focus and coherence. Then they also look at rigor and mathematical practices. And then finally, they look at usability of the program itself. Well, as you can see, from kindergarten to fourth grade, this program is rated extremely highly. It has only lost 1 point in all the possible points that it could have been rated in. And that 1 point was in the areas of standards of mathematical practice. Those include things like making sense of problems, reasoning abstractly, modeling with math. And the 1 point it lost wasn't because those aren't there. They absolutely are there in every single lesson. They lost a point because in some of the lessons they didn't call out exactly which mathematical practice was being used at that moment. So a pretty minor thing. In all, you can see from this review, it is an excellent program. Another reason why we're coming to you to recommend this program is because we have been working so hard with our District Advisory Council, which is another group of teachers who are helping us rethink math instruction in our district. And this is in collaboration with our work with TNTP. This is a word cloud of words that that committee came up with for what we want our students to know and be able to do in math and what skills we want them to have when they graduate. Things like problem solving, having engaging lessons, real world experiences, and to persevere in solving problems. Those are the things we're looking for, and those are the things that are within the program that we are representing to you today. So some of our teachers that did the pilot gave me their opinions on the program. You can see some of them on the screen there. I'm not going to read them to you, but I know that you'll see general themes as you read them. For example, you're going to see some teachers talked about mathematical discourse, giving students an opportunity to talk about math. Not just listen, not just do problems, but actually have conversations about math instruction and how her first graders were able to do it successfully. You're also going to see comments about student success and developing independence. You're going to see comments about having a strong online component that the students were excited about using, and that there are differentiation resources in this program that teachers really wanted as a part of their instructional repertoire. So we are excited to recommend this to you today. I also have the privilege of having some teachers who did do the pilot of this resource here with me this evening to talk about their experiences. So the first teacher who will be up here is Ms. Lauren Wolf. She actually just recently presented or spoke to you. Was it last week? Yeah, so she's back, 2 weeks ago. She's back again to talk to you about her experiences with using the program and her great success that her students had. So I'm going to step away. Ms. Lauren Wolf is going to talk to you about her experiences.
Good evening. So my name is Lauren Wolf, and I teach fourth grade at CT Vivian. I piloted iReady Mathematics this semester, and I'm here tonight to tell you about my experience. iReady Math is a rigorous math program that teaches students how to critically think about math in different ways. The workbooks are very reading heavy in the 2 through 4th curriculum, which we see as students transfer from the K-1 curriculum into 2-4 curriculum in general. The online interface for teachers becomes easier to use as you get used to it, just like anything does, and it has a lot of beneficial tools and information for teachers. Though I didn't get to use all of the online tools, iReady seems to have it all. They have students begin with the diagnostic test, which tests their mathematical abilities, and then it creates an educational path for students to work on skill deficits. So they have their own path they can do, but teachers can also, as a teacher, I can also push lessons out to my students. As students go through their path, their mathematical abilities grow, and they begin to understand concepts even better. Another benefit of the online interface for students is that, as a teacher, like I said, I can push out concept practice lessons for students to complete from any grade level, either individually or whole class. So for instance, if Susie doesn't understand basic addition, I can add that to her practice work on just her interface. I don't have to give it to everyone. I can also add advanced concepts for some of my students who are in need of enrichment. It reminds me a lot of iExcel and how iExcel recommends things to students after they take the diagnostic. Except these practice sessions follow how things are done in the workbook. Speaking of the workbook, iReady has ready-made slides that go with the workbook pages very well. I use them daily with my students, and my students find them very beneficial. Because the slides are all formatted similarly, the students are able to easily follow from one session to the next within the lesson concept. So that's how they're broken down. Each lesson is divided into sessions of 3 to 5 lessons. So you work on a concept for about a week before you move on, which is really nice. iReady builds upon skills students have been previously taught, so it may take a few years to see some of the growth, but I do know that I've seen great growth in my students this semester since we started using iReady Mathematics. And I actually brought it to Tracy today to show to her because my students are beginning to understand concepts easier, they're able to have meaningful math talks, and they're more willing to participate in class discussions. So my kids took NWEA Math this past Friday, and I was a little surprised. I have 21 students. One of my 21 students went down in math by 1 RIT point, and this is a student that's already in the 76th percentile, so that growth becomes extremely difficult for them. 10 out of 21 raised their RIT scores by at least 1 point, and a whopping 10 out of 21 met or exceeded their goals that I gave them. Typically, in the spring, we make a goal of going 2% higher. Well, I made mine 3%, and about half my class met or exceeded that 3% threshold. And when I looked it up on NWEA, their projections were 6 points for all of my students. What I got was 14 of 21 students met or exceeded NWEA's target for them, with 5 students being off by only a couple of points. And I literally brought it all in highlighted for Tracy to show her. My yellow students are my ones who all met or exceeded NWEA's projection, and my pink are the ones who were so close. And I had students going from percentiles such as 18 to 25, 7 to 16, 51 to 61, 59 to 71, and 31 to 46. So 15, that's 15 percentiles that they jumped. Every program has its pros and cons, and I weighed those when I voted for between Reveal and iReady Math when we were asked to choose. And after I inspected everything closely, I chose iReady Math because I see the potential for great growth from our students with this program. I also see great PD potential because I don't think in a semester's time I unlocked half the things that you can do, and I'm excited to learn more. Thank you.
So our next teacher presenter, who also piloted the program at Glen Oak with her 3rd graders, is Ms. Dani Vogel. So I'm going to have her share some of her experiences with you this evening.
Thank you. I'm Dani Vogel, and I'm at Glen Oak, and I'm here representing my students because they wanted me to tell you that they love this program. They love it. I asked them if we should go back to using Eureka Math or if we should stick with iReady, and 100% said iReady. Even though our piloting time is over, we're still continuing on. They love the games that are built into iReady. They enjoyed the diagnostic, believe it or not. This is the test that gives me information about what they know and they don't know. Embedded in this test is a game called Stacking Cats, and they found Stacking Cats hilarious. They thought that was wonderful, and then they could tell that they were making progress anytime they got to stack cats. So in our classroom, I'll ask them, so do you feel like today is a stacking cat day? And they'll say, yes, of course, or no, today wasn't a stacking cat day. So it's become part of our language within our classroom, and the kids really enjoy having interesting conversations about math, trying to do math with using the vocabulary, which is really a change from where we started at the beginning of the year. I just could not be more excited about iReady. I've talked it up to our third grade team. My team is thrilled about iReady. The kids are ready. They can't wait to continue to go on. Today we just started Perimeter, and these are pictures from today. They literally have their nose in the workbook trying their best to make sure they understand what they're going to talk about, because we're getting ready to turn in talk there. So my kids are really in favor of iReady, and as a teacher, it has given me a great amount of data so that I can turn and help with them find what they don't know and lift them up. I'm sorry we don't take our NWEA math until tomorrow, but I'm happy to let you know the results. I'm sure we're going to be stacking some cats. And thank you so much for letting teachers be part of this process. It has been an amazing experience, and my kids feel honored to be part of it, and so do I.
So I'm sure you can see I couldn't possibly have done this without their help. They're an amazing group of teachers. There's a few other teachers who allowed me the opportunity to come to their classrooms and watch everything in action. So Ms. Baker's class from Franklin, she's a kindergarten teacher, and you can see a few pictures of her class on the left. They're all actively engaged, doing the activities. They're using the manipulatives. If you look closely in those pictures, you will see busy children learning, which is exactly what we want to see. And on the right, you'll see Jennifer Roseboro's class from Franklin. She is first graders. They were counting different manipulatives and making groups of 10 and seeing what happens when you do different changes and trades with those 10s. It was a great lesson, and I know her students really enjoyed it as well. So big thank you to them as well for allowing me the opportunity, and thank you to our teachers here who spoke to us this evening about the program. We also did a parent survey. This parent survey was sent out to the parents of students who participated in the pilot. In that survey, 73.3% of parents stated that they would like to have access to online resources like videos or additional practice, that it was important or very important to them. 93.4% of parents stated that they would like to have a workbook that students can write into with examples to use for homework, that was important or very important to them. And 80% of parents felt that having access to a parent newsletter with information about what's coming up in class was important or very important. Out of those three things that you see there, only the parent newsletter is what we currently have available in our current math program in K4. So the other two resources, one of which was rated very highly by parents as a highly desired aspect of the program, is not currently available to our parents. We would like to see it be. So for tonight, your action items include these two things. You will see the purchase of K4 iReady Classroom Mathematics for teacher and student resources for every K4 classroom in the district with digital access for 6 years. This includes the workbooks that will be on a subscription for 6 years and the materials that teachers need digitally and in print. You will also see an action item related to hand-to-mind classroom manipulative sets. Those are the pictures that you saw in an earlier slide. We were purchasing one per classroom that have the classroom sets of some of the manipulatives you saw students using in those pictures. So I do hope that you consider all of our important information that we had to share and make sure that our K4 students have the opportunity to have new math materials just like our older students do. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. I do have one question or two. How many parents were surveyed for the parent survey?
So we sent the survey to all the parents who had students participating in the pilot. I had 15 parents respond to that survey. The majority of those parents were from Harrison.
Thank you. And it's a 6-year contract, so after that 6 year, I'm assuming we'll have to repurchase.
We would not necessarily have to repurchase the manipulatives because they go in the classroom they're a non-consumable item. The teacher resources as in digital access, that would expire after 6 years. as well as the paid out portion of the student workbooks, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
So that was going to be one of my questions. So we were going to have enough with this to supply books for every student to have one for the next 6 years?
Yes.
With that? Okay, yeah. So thank you for rolling this out in a piloting program. I know my daughter's class was one of them, and I like the online piece that they can do. We currently pay for an additional Prodigy, so that she comes home and she loves to do this stuff at home. So math is like really her forte. So I was really excited to see this, and the teacher was also very supportive of this iReady program. She said the MAP scores had gone up. She said it's just an amazing program for them. But that's what I wanted to double check, was that they would have the access to the workbooks. Then every student would have a copy of that.
Yes,
and
we're paying it out for 6 years.
Okay, and then there would also be that. I guess, username or password that the child could use when they got home to do any sort of expansion. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Currently, we have a really nifty system of students are able to log into Schooler, which aligns with Microsoft products. They log in one place, and then they have one-click access to all the digital resources we have for that particular student that they have at school that they can access at home. And this would be one of those.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Ross?
I have a couple of questions. I probably misread this. The second slide, I think, talked about algebra, pre-algebra.
Oh, yes. One of our district goals, yeah, go ahead, one more. One of the reasons why we've been doing this curriculum renewal work is because our district goal is working toward increasing Algebra I readiness across every student in the district. So we started with middle school, we worked on high school next, and now we're doing K-4.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, how that particular statement related to K-4.
How does it relate to K-4?
Yeah.
Because all learning in math builds on previous learning. So as we are a first grade student, we're learning skills that we use in second grade, we're learning skills we use in third grade, and it keeps going so that as they get all the way to 8th grade, they can be ready for Algebra I. No one teacher or grade level can do it all.
No, I understand that, but for some of the schools, middle schools, particularly on the south side of Peoria, it has been said that because of their scores, they weren't ready for the pre-algebra. So, in my mind, the ones that graduate from 8th grade and go into high school would not be ready for Algebra I. So I'm not sure how that's determined. How you determine which student is ready and which is not? Is it just the NWEA scores?
That is one of the components that we look at, yes. And as you heard from our teachers this evening, a lot of them have seen growth in NWEA. So our goal is that will continue through their time until they get to 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah. I just want to know, what plan do you have to bring those students in those schools that have not had any exposure to pre-algebra? How does that play into some of this that you're doing here?
So our pre-algebra standards are traditionally 8th grade math standards. So we worked on that first because that was our middle school adoption to make sure that they had a solid resource for 8th grade math, and they have had 1 year of implementation of that resource. In that 1 year, we have grown in the number of students who are Algebra I, taking Algebra I as 8th grade students. So we are seeing growth, but we've only had 1 year of implementation of that new resource. So we're hoping that over time we will see greater growth and expansion into the Algebra I as an 8th grade program.
Okay, I just am still not understanding. How many students, how many schools on the south side of Peoria are actually implementing the 8th grade Algebra I?
Every school in the district has at least one student participating in Algebra I as an 8th grader next year. Not this year, next year.
Every school in the district has at least one student?
Every school in Peoria Public Schools that has 8th grade students in it will have at least one student participating in Algebra I next year. Some schools, we have 4 schools that will be doing in-person Algebra I instruction. That would be Glen Oak, Lindbergh, Rolling Acres, Mark Bills. The other schools will have a virtual teacher housed at Manual, teaching virtual Algebra I instruction to the different students across the district.
I'm not sure if that answers my question, but
I'm sorry. Please ask again.
no,
Maybe I misunderstood.
I can't understand why it would only concern one student in a school in an eighth grade class. I mean, each school has more than one eighth grade class, so.
Of course. Yes, we're looking at supporting our students that are ready to take on that extra challenge. Because remember, students are still doing eighth grade math too. So as they're eighth graders, they're taking eighth grade math and Algebra I. So these are students who they feel like they're ready for the challenge. Their parents feel like they're ready for the challenge. Principals and teachers are like, oh yeah, these kids are ready to do this extra level of work.
Okay, I guess if they're not ready, they go on and graduate to ninth grade, and then they're definitely behind.
They'll take Algebra I as ninth graders. Yes, they absolutely will.
Okay. Let's see, I had one other question. Well, one of those slides had like for kindergarten through, I think it was K through 4 slides, and you talked about the different items that they use to, what do you call it? Yeah. I was looking at some of those, here, on this one here. That I'm surprised that the teachers actually accepted those. Some of them are choking hazards and, no? Okay.
So typically, manipulative kits have pieces like that. They're used as counters. That's an example of a first grade kit. And if there are choking hazards in them, they're usually not recommended for children under 3, but we don't give those to children under 3. That would be a first grade example that you see there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Costick?
I'm sorry, Ms. Costick, I just can't hear you.
Have the same confusion. I can't figure out only one student. If these children are taking this iReady classroom math from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, and per school in the district, at least only one, how is that determined? If you have, if there are multiple children that, math is a thing, either you get it or you don't. And if there are multiple children that have a clear understanding and meet all of the criteria,
Absolutely.
Why is it only one? Because see, now, in my eyes, you're stagnating the other children that are not allowed to participate. And that's unfair.
So we're talking about 8th grade Algebra I right now,
Yes.
correct? Okay. So as far as that program, what we have done is we've been looking at their NWA scores to see which kids are performing at approximately a grade level ahead in their understanding, which in NWA percentiles is approximately the 70th percentile. So we start there and we look for students who are performing at about that amount, about that rate of their trending data in NWA. We try to identify those students in every building, but we also want to make sure we have representation in every building. So we searched for other ways to find those students, teacher recommendations, principal recommendations. We reached out to take all sorts of information from the schools to compile a list of students who might be ready for that extra rigor and challenge. So that work was done this year for next year's class. Those students would not have been part of the K-4 math process, but they would have been part of our middle school adoption this year.
Thank you, Ms. Costick. Any other questions?
I'm just not getting it. I go back to a time when our high school students at Manual were eligible and really wanted to take AP classes, but because there wasn't enough students, to warrant having a teacher, they lost out. And I'm just wondering, what would happen if you offered this math to all 8th grade students and see who rose to the occasion? Not just based on a recommendation from a teacher or from NWA scores, which could be reflected, by several different components of, how they feel, social, emotional. I'm just saying, what would happen if you just offered it to all students and allowed them to rise to the occasion.
I always want students to rise to the occasion, right? We want to give them those opportunities to thrive. I hear you. So we looked at students who seemed academically ready to tackle the challenges of the rigor of Algebra I. Their math is very linear in its learning progression, right? It builds on skills from previous grades. So we look to see which students are performing at about that level. If a student is not necessarily mastering the skills at the grade level that they are currently in, it is very hard for them to work a grade level ahead because they haven't mastered the skills at the grade that they are currently working in. So we're tackling that challenge first by finding resources to make sure that teachers are teaching rigorous instructional practices, that they are giving students opportunities to use grade level materials and grade level instruction. And we're making sure that teachers have high expectations for their students, which TNTP will talk to you about here in a moment. So we're working on that. That is part of our task. But I will tell you that we won't have the reason for students to not have access to Algebra I just because they go to a specific school, because we're doing this virtual program that we started this school year. Because before we did only have schools where if there was an in-person teacher, that in-person teacher presented their Algebra I lessons, but there were schools that didn't have one. And this school year that we're in right now was the first year that we fixed that problem. And we're expanding it next year. So that program to increase Algebra I readiness and access to students is growing.
Thank you. Olivia?
Okay. I think part of the confusion was when you said the at least one student. When you said that at least one student would end up going into pre-algebra or pre-algebra, were you're stating that just off the fact that they've been in their updated middle school program this year and will be going into that next year, correct?
That is correct.
So if this was adopted and this was going up, and let's say we go, just say from the kindergarten, and they keep on going up and they keep going through all the different updated materials, they'll end up being at the stage that these students next year will be at by the time they get to that point in time, correct?
That is absolutely the goal of these resources, giving them on grade level resources and instruction so that they can stay on grade level throughout their learning so they're ready for that Algebra I as 8th graders. You got it.
And this recommendation of the teachers is almost like how they do it for high school, am I correct? Because I remember 4 years ago as a high schooler, we got taken into a room where our teachers came together, they told what they believed we could do, and we picked our high school classes based off what our teachers believed and our NWA score and EA scores. Am I getting?
It is similar to that, yes. Students were given the opportunity from the principal. They had a conference with the principal and talked about it, and parents were notified and said, is this something that you would like your child to do? So everyone's on board.
Okay, I just wanted to gain some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
And our final district presentation will be TNTP Year in Review, Lab Sites and Academic Diagnostic Outcomes. Jennifer Jensen, TNTP Academic Director.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. And I'm really excited to be here and to have heard this whole conversation and around the new curricular materials, because the things that we want to share with you really go right in line with what Tracy was just talking about. So if we remember what our 3 goals are, and you can go ahead to the next slide, we have this goal around strengthening math teaching practices in Peoria Public Schools to increase access to algebra for all students. And we are utilizing a 3-pronged approach. That first approach was the District Advisory Council that you heard Tracy mention, where we had stakeholders from across the district, teachers, administrators, some of our executive leadership team coming together to really to learn about effective math pedagogy and talk about what we wanted to see Peoria Public School students experiencing in that. And so with that, we developed a vision, which we'll share with you in a moment. We also were working in 2 specific lab sites, Lincoln K-8 and Mark Bills with teachers around strong mathematical teaching practices to use as a proof point across the district. And then we conducted an academic diagnostic. So we went into 12 schools and largely middle schools, one high school, some elementary, but to really get a picture of the access that students have to high expectations, rigorous instruction, and access to grade level content. So I'm going to take you through each of these really briefly so that you can kind of see a picture of the work we've done this year. So first, with our District Advisory Council, we met monthly, and we were able to develop a vision for math instruction that we want to share with you. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide, here is the vision that we came up with. Tracy showed a slide of all of the different keywords, but notice that we want students to identify as mathematicians by engaging in purposeful real-world problem solving, thinking, taking risks, and learning through productive struggle, collaborating with peers in mathematical conversations to deepen understanding, and that came up a lot in the conversation around the curricular materials adoption. Utilizing appropriate tools, vocabulary, and varied approaches strategically. Our students are mathematically proficient, prepared for post-secondary experiences, and able to recognize the relevance of mathematics in their lives. I had the opportunity to talk with a group of your students a couple weeks ago, and they shared a lot of these same sentiments as we were talking about to them, as I was talking to them, about what was good about math and what they liked and what they didn't like and what they'd like to see. And so this really resonates with the things that we heard students saying, and it's something that we now hope to socialize through the District Advisory Council and use as kind of a North Star for other decisions that are made around math in the district. If we go to the next slide, we worked deeply with 2 schools. My team led 3 PLCs a week with math teachers in both Lincoln and Mark Bills around effective math pedagogy. We observed and coached teachers. We were in their rooms once or twice a month throughout the year, and then would follow up with specific feedback and debriefs, and really saw some growth in teacher practices. And we will actually be doing a final data collection this week and surveying teachers along those continued progress. So our next steps for the lab schools include more focused work with school leaders and expanding potentially to additional schools. The next part is the academic diagnostic, and this really gets to kind of think of it as a landscape analysis for your schools in terms of the access that students have to grade appropriate assignments, strong instruction, and high teacher expectations. We had teams in 12 campuses around the district that were chosen by the district leadership. And we're going to just share some really high-level trends from that report now. So what we found when we were in schools and in classrooms is that 57% of the assignments that students were given were evaluated as grade appropriate. That is, if you can hang on just a second there, that is a little lower than we'd like to see, but overall not too bad, knowing that sometimes there is a review process at times. You can notice that there were a little bit lacking on relevance, and that's where another piece where I think your adopted curricula will really help with that. If we go to the next slide, though, we notice that in our evaluation process, only 31% of the lessons had strong instruction. And specifically, we're talking about those effective math pedagogy and student ownership. And specifically, when I talk about student ownership, we're talking about students collaborating, talking about the math. Like instead of just sitting and like maybe being told what to do, they're engaged in that process. So again, I'm going to draw you back to the pictures that Tracy had of students really engaged in the mathematics in their class. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about student ownership. So with our work with the lab schools, we've really been focusing on those second 2 core actions. And we've seen a lot of growth in those 2 schools in particular. So with this diagnostic report, we have some recommendations. If you go, so the first is to establish a vision for excellent mathematics instruction. But guess what? We've worked on that this year already with the District Advisory Council. Our next step is socializing it, first with you guys, with principals, with teachers. The next thing is to create guidance and protocols for strong curriculum implementation. We saw a distinct difference between between teachers implementing the district curriculum, which was a lot higher rated, versus their own curriculum that they might have created or found. So creating guidance around that. And then a third one would be training leaders and teachers on the vision, the curricular materials, and expectations for curriculum use. And then the fourth is really just seeing what you heard your teacher say tonight, that they saw the students succeeding. And so with that, they're excited to see what they will continue to do. So that's kind of that fourth prong of that. So those are the recommendations coming out of the academic diagnostic. But I just wanted to highlight that those are things that we have already been working on then in different spaces this year. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
I have one.
Vice President Ross?
Yeah, let me see if I understand. So this, what was it?
TNTP?
What does that stand for?
It stands for the New Teacher Project. Because when we started 20 years ago, we did a lot of work around developing new teachers.
You said new teacher. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is kind of you said we did this last year.
No, we started this project this year. So we actually started in October.
Oh, okay. October of 2021.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is am I hearing correctly that this is like an oversight or of making sure that the curriculums that we have are done with fidelity, or why do we need that?
So great question. So in 2018, we did a national report. We released a national report called The Opportunity Myth. And in that report, in that research, okay, we looked at schools across the nation and measured access to 4 key resources. And we found that access to these 4 key resources really ensured student success after graduation. And that is access to grade-appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and high expectations from their teachers. And so knowing that Peoria has a goal of increasing access to algebra in 8th grade and improving math outcomes for all students, we wanted to take this 3-pronged approach of starting with some schools that we would start to work with deeply, while also getting that landscape analysis, if you will, to see where we are so that we know like what supports Peoria might want to implement as they move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Dr. Reinking?
Yeah, so based on this kind of initial report, do you just provide recommendations and then the district takes a hold of that, or are you I know that I remember when we voted on you all coming in, and I forget how long it was, it might have just been this year. So then are you providing recommendations and then it's up to our district to fulfill those recommendations, or are you staying with us to help fulfill some of those recommendations?
That's a great question. At this point, our contract is only through this year. We have been talking about possibilities for future partnerships, but the recommendations are here for the district to act on as you see fit.
Okay.
So, well, the $133,000 is for what you already did?
I'm sorry, I don't have the actual contract. That would be my partner that would have that information.
Total cost was $300.
Is this the second part of it, or what? Okay, so what are we voting?
This is different. So what Tracy reported on is specifically the curriculum.
Yeah, I know.
What they're reporting on is we've already paid a contract. Yes. We voted on a contract in August or September and approved TNTP to come in and do this evaluation of our district at specific schools, which are the specific schools she's reporting on. And as part of that contract that we approved as the board, they were going to provide us recommendations, which is essentially they're providing us now. And that is what you're saying is the end of our contract with you. There's a potential if we want to continue to contract with you, it would be a different price and all of that. But the contract that we voted on in either August or September, I forget when it was approved by the board. And this is what was in the contract for you to complete.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it was definitely like working with teachers in those 2 schools as well as the district advisory council, and more than just that diagnostic report as well. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I believe that was in September as well when we voted on that new teacher project. This school year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now at the point of presentation by audience. Presentations by audience are limited to 5 minutes, and we ask that you keep them constructive. Our first presentation will be from Mr. Terry Knapp.
I have two things I'd like to bring up tonight. A year ago, I brought up the use of the swimming pools. I've not heard a report back at this horseshoe as to whether or not swimming is being taught at the three high schools, even though the water was in two of the three high schools. Of course, Woodruff is not being used at all, and that, from a community standpoint, is kind of a questionable thing as well. And I mentioned at that time that at graduation back in the early 70s, we had a number of deaths of high school students on graduation night. I think as many as 4 or 5, maybe 6 at different venues. And at Woodruff, we went to overnight parties where the students came back at 11 o'clock if they wished to, and they stayed until breakfast in the morning. And there have been no deaths since that time. It's my understanding that we're not even teaching swimming in the high schools, and I'd like you to report on that, either make a comment tonight or report at the next meeting whether or not that's happening. I think that's critical, especially amongst our people of color, that they are many times afraid of the water. And when they are introduced to swimming, that's one of their favorite activities. I talked to Mr. Runkle last week at Woodruff, and he said the students loved the water after taking swimming in PE. That's a direct quote from him, and I think it's important that you look into that and reinstate swimming if it's not being done at this time. Maybe the young lady can comment to that. You're from Central? They swim in PE anymore?
Yeah, after.
Don't want to comment, that's fine. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the track. Congratulations to the Board of Education, Mr. Willis, Dr. Karat, and Mr. Adler especially, and the rest of the board members for coming up with some funding for this track. The track itself at Central was a waste of money. I mean, from the standpoint of venue that you can put on a big track meet, you can't do it. You got to send the people for the field events up over the hill. There's inadequate parking. You got to sit the runners in the infield, which even with the three city schools and Quest and Peoria Heights, it's undoable because the kids have got to sit in that infield, and the starter can't even see the opposite side. If you've ever officiated a track meet, which I've done, you can't do it on a large scale. I think it's very important that now that you have this money, and you put together a committee, ask Bradley University to participate with you. They're runners, they have an excellent track team. They're running at high schools. They might choose to engage a partnership somewhat with you so you can come up with extra money to build that track. This could be the best site in the state of Illinois for track. The gentleman from Running Central, Adam White, met with your group 3 or 4 years ago, and he has connections with Adidas and Nike, and they could bring Midwest regionals in here for running for all levels. Bradley University could bring the Missouri Valley Conference meet here. As you know, the stadium is the only venue south of I-80 that has a roof. The University of Illinois doesn't even have a roof. You could build a quality stadium. Miss Lathan did not do that. the stadium at Central is supposed to have a football field in the oval down on the track. It's too short. It's 5 yards too short. Can't even have football games there. The original intent was that the football games be played at the high schools and Central have their own lighted field and not even use the stadium, and you were going to do away with the stadium. I think it's very important, and Mr. Willis, I trust you, you know what I'm talking about, that as long as you're doing this, don't jump into this. Get A.J. Guyton and the gentleman from Central who's the athletic director and from who have connections with all kinds of universities, that in a matter of minutes they can get on the phone and get experts in here to tell you what you should do with a newly built track. You've done a great job to this point. Please go all the way and do it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Our final speaker this evening will be Miss Dani Vogel. I believe she may have already left. Okay. So next, we normally have response to audience presentation. However, Dr. Karat, Dr. Karat is not in attendance today for this board meeting. I would like Olivia, to our student board member, to respond to Mr. Knapp.
Mr. Knapp left.
Oh, he left?
While he left, my sophomore year, so 2 years ago, we had the opportunity before COVID hit to take a swim class. While we did not have it last year, I do not know if we have it this year, but because we have a swim team, they offer to us that we can join the swim team. They will teach us how to swim. They will teach us how to utilize our abilities. So in a way, we do have a swim class.
Thank you, Olivia. And we are now at item number 10, approval of minutes for April 25th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Costick, Mr. Claus,
Still on.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Dr. Ranking, Mr. Shaw,
Aye.
Mrs. Ross,
Aye.
President Wilson.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 1, under information items, we have superintendent update.
Exactly.
Yeah, Dr. Ike, did you have anything that you would like to update?
Not the update, but the Freedom of Information request when we get there.
I'm sorry?
There's no update, but I do have the Freedom of Information request update.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2, proposed expenditures over $2,500. Questions for Mr. Willis? Seeing none. Item number 3, report of request under the Freedom of Information Act and the status of such request. Dr. Ike.
Thank you, President Wilson. Since our board meeting on April 25, 2022, the district has received 8 new Freedom of Information requests. There are 3 pending requests noted on April 25, 2022. All 3 of them have been closed. But of the current requests, i.e. the 8, 4 of them have been completed and 4 are still pending. We have received to date 22 requests for this calendar year for a total of $1,100. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Dr. Ike. We are now ready for the consent agenda. Vice President Ross.
Thank you, President Wilson. The consent agenda consists of gifts to the school district, year-to-date $61,616.35. Just to highlight one of the donations for this time, $550 assorted school supplies for Peoria Public Schools. Number 2, payment of bills. Number 3, payment for travel. Number 4, human resources report. Number 5, third-party administration workers' compensation. The proposed action is to approve a third-party administrator for the workmen's compensation program that would be funded through tort funds monies. Number 6, curriculum associates K through 4 math adoption. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of curriculum associate iReady classroom mathematics instructional material and supplies to serve as math curriculum material for K through 4 students with a total of $897,706.27. Number 7, Numbers World's mathematical instructional resources. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of a Numbers World mathematical instruction and supplies to support summer school learning and small group instructions for K through 8 students with a total of $133,359.72. Number 8, approval of Woodruff students to Skills USA National Competition. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve culinary Woodruff students and chaperones to attend National Pro Start competition in Washington, D.C., May 5th through 9th, 2022. And that is the entirety of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Vice President Ross. Is there any items board members would like to pull for a separate vote? Seeing none, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Dr. Reinking.
For number 8, this is after the fact that we're getting this approved, correct? Because
Yes.
okay, is it because they won and then they ended up going before our last meeting? I guess why are we getting it as like a reactive rather than proactive?
Dr. Ike, would you like to speak on that?
Okay, it was between time. They had explained it to us.
Dr. Ike, did you hear my question?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. The timing of it, essentially.
Okay,
Yeah.
I figured. I just wanted, yep. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Reinking. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Secretary?
Mrs. Costick? Mr. Claus?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Rankin? Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
President Wilson?
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Next, deliberation agenda. Item number 9.
Item number 9, I move that the Board of Education approve expulsion listed on the report dated May 8, 2022 be approved as presented.
That's May 9th.
May 9th.
Oh, May 9, 2022. Be approved as presented.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Mrs. Costick? Mr. Claus?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Rankin? Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
President Wilson?
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 10.
Item number 10, expulsion with expulsion to be held in abeyance. I move that the Board of Education approve expulsion with expulsion held in abeyance listed on the report dated May 9, 2022 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Mrs. Costick? Mr. Claus?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Rankin? Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
President Wilson?
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Presentation and suggestions by board members. Reports from board committees.
The Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee would like to report on our work for this past year of 2021-2022. We do have a PowerPoint that hopefully Michelle has. I've updated. Oh, look at that. Board member Murphy and myself were leading this year. The Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee did not meet at all during the 2020-2021 school year, so we wanted to report on the work that we did this past year. So these are the committee members. You can see that we have parents, we have teachers. I started to put their position after it, teacher, parent, board member, different types of things, and then I realized that many of the people on our committee hold multiple hats, and I didn't want to miss one of the hats. So here are the participants who attended meetings with us every single month. You can go to the next slide. And with that, so the way that we designed our work plan is that the PTAC developed with contacts. So Board Member Murphy and myself reached out to specific people within the community to make sure that we had representation in every single one of the districts. And then we also had parents volunteer. So many of the parents who volunteered were from the north side, but we recruited people from South End and East Bluff to participate, as well as people who represented schools that were not on the north end of Peoria, again, to have that representation. During the year, we met one time per month in person and or virtually, depending on how people felt comfortable at whatever point in the year we were meeting. And we did, I think we might have taken 1 month off, but other than that, we did meet consistently from September until April. And then as a group, we decided to work on 2 key areas. So we had many outdated policies in the 700, which concerns really student behavior and students. And so we have worked on that. And then one of the things that we're going to present tonight for information only is a focus on the high school dress code, and to provide some background on that. Yep, you're good. There will be no decisions or asks of that, but we just wanted to present it as the final kind of share out from the committee, knowing that the board does need to make some decisions internally after these recommendations are put forth from this committee's work. So we focused again on the 700 level policies, which focused on students. 7110 was a policy we did not have at all. And so based on some work that we get from the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois School Boards Association, we realized that this was a policy that we needed to add. And it's all about police interviews and how police can interview students on school grounds related to arguments, fights, anything. And so we as a board we as a committee put this forward, went through the policy committee, and it was approved this year by the board as a whole. 7190 was again updated and approved by the board. So both of those have been updated and already approved by this school board. 750, we are in continuous conversation with the policy committee regarding some nuances with some updated laws, just to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed, to make sure that we are up to date with what has been put forth within the last few years since these policies have been updated. And then the suspension policy 7200 has also been put forth by this committee and has been approved by the board. And then the final thing that we wanted to talk about, and this is a report out from this committee, knowing that this is purely for information only. This is not something that we will or can pull consensus on tonight, but we wanted to share this with the wider community so that you understand where we're coming from. So 7160 is, it's a policy that focuses on student appearance, and it's very short. It basically says that the superintendent and the principal of buildings are guided to put dress codes into handbooks. And then we have 7165, which talks specifically only about elementary and middle school uniform policy. At the current moment, we have absolutely no policies in our handbook regarding high school dress code. It is purely based on 7160, which is the high school dress code, which is handbook specific. And so knowing that as a committee, we decided to do a little bit of an investigation, and I want to shout out Shama St. Louis, who did much of the legwork for this and a lot of the investigation throughout this time. But as a whole committee, we're really proud of what we're able to put forth, again, purely for information's sake tonight. And I put this out of order. Can you go down one? So again, purely for information purposes only. We do know that we have to put this before the board, and the board does need to discuss it. It is not a policy, it is a consensus. This is not a policy that we are voting on. After talking with our counsel, our school board lawyer, this is not you, Fraser. This is not something that is going to be put into policy, but something that needs to be seen as a consensus. In order for Dr. Karat to help advise the high school principals. Additionally, we have asked for high school principal input to see, is this something that would work for your schools, and what are your thoughts on that? So Michelle, if you can go back one. So the high school dress code, there's a lot of information. This is not the entirety of the dress code, but essentially we have 2 slides regarding the dress code, and it's kind of the first and second part of it. This is directly taken from a high school dress code that is in Evanston, Illinois, and Evanston, Illinois is one of the more progressive schools in Illinois, and the reason that they have a dress code of such is because dress codes traditionally have been sexist, classist, racist. There's a lot of objectification, primarily for women and females, objectifying what they look like, what people see on their bodies, and different types of things as that, along with many other aspects around body shaming. Some of the other racist things that are often in school dress codes and can be perceived in a racist way is around concepts that we need to update regardless of if this is edited and provided consensus by the school board. Is around the Crown Act. Specifically in Illinois, it's called the Jett-Hawkins Act, but it's essentially that anyone can wear natural hairstyles. It's named after Jett-Hawkins, who was a 4-year-old. I think he was in the Chicago area, a 4-year-old who was demanded to get his locks cut off during preschool. And so this was a law named after him, but that's just one example of some of the policies that are trying to push against the sexism, classism, objectification, and racist concepts that have been built into policies, dress codes around student appearance for generations. So this, again, I'm not going to read it to you. This is one example of this. Michelle, if you can go to the last. Yep. And then this is just another example. Again, we did take out some things that as a committee we felt maybe in Central Illinois it wouldn't be appropriate. Again, that's a judgment call, but this is something that the committee really sees as their legacy and sees as something that can really be a progressive aspect that we can do as a district. So with that, again, we are not asking for a consensus. We have shared it with high school principals to see if they have any feedback. We have provided it to all the board members for informational purposes only, knowing that over the next few months, I'm sure we will be having internal conversations regarding this dress code with any edits that may be needed. But this, as the committee is putting it forward as a recommendation, is really seen as something that is creating an environment where teachers don't feel like they have to police students' bodies and is setting an environment of inclusivity of whatever students feel like wearing. One of the big pushbacks often is, well, you're going to have girls coming in tube tops and short shorts. That's, again, going back to those sexist ideas of objectification of women. It is also anecdotally seen that you might have it for a couple days and then you find them that they're coming to school in pajamas anyways. You can ask high school teachers in Iowa City where this is happening. You can ask high school teachers in Evanston where this is happening. The worry that girls are... And again, it's girls are going to come in, quote, inappropriate clothing is not something that comes to fruition, but it also goes back to the concept of the objectification and sexism that is often built in to appearance policies. So with that, again, this is just a presentation from our work. Mike, I'm going to throw it over to you in case you have anything you wanted to add.
Thanks, Dr. Runking. No, you pretty much summed that all up. Again, it's for all of us to review, and we'll kind of be discussing that further from here on out. But I did want to thank all of the members who came to these meetings. These were very early morning meetings. They always showed up. They had their assignments, so to speak, ready to go for us to present. We made really good use of our time. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all the committee members that took this seriously and came to this. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports from board committees?
I just needed to get clarification on your report. You said it's not a recommendation. Well, it is a recommendation. Well, I'm going back to the fact that I started the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee based on a law that came down from the state that said we needed to work on issues relating to discipline.
And this is directly related to discipline.
This is how we came up with the dress code policies, the policy for the uniforms, and also a dress code for the high schools that we've worked under for a number of years. And I guess I'm not clear as to, well, I guess your committee was looking at a lot of different things, but how it's related to discipline.
Yep. It's directly related to discipline. So the policies that we have in place are actually outdated if you look at the laws. So the uniform is still in date, but there are very many things that are outdated if we look at the laws that Pritzker and his entourage, I don't know what they're called, the people with him have put into place. But this is directly related to discipline because teachers have reported that a lot of the infractions that they're seeing, especially in middle school and high school, we're not touching middle school with this, is that they're out of dress code and it's busy work. It's, do we decide to discipline them on wearing a shirt that shows their belly button, or are we going to do something else? There's also the discrimination that's happening for students of color in high schools that are getting called out for having their stomach shown, and black and brown girls are getting called out for that, and white girls are not. And so just thinking about the disparities that are happening within that, as well as dress, I can give you lots and lots of research that shows directly the link between students feeling comfortable and inclusive and as if they can belong and be seen in an environment directly related to the constructs that are put onto the structure of what they're wearing. There's lots of research within the last 2 or 3 years that shows that when we put on too constrictive of dress codes, that it's just giving students one more thing to push back on in an environment where they already don't feel as if they have a lot of control because of the structures that are put into place in schooling.
Okay, and is that including, are we talking about uniforms as well?
We are not, nope.
The main
For
reason
this
we put these in place was because so many kids were being bullied and treated badly because they didn't have the name brand clothes and that some kids have, and uniforms kind of put everybody on the same level.
This is specifically for high school. This has nothing to do with the 7165, which is the uniform policy with elementary and middle school. This has nothing to do with a policy. This is strictly providing a recommendation. Eventually, if we get this consensus by the board, providing a recommendation to Dr. Karat, who is the one who then provides a recommendation to the high schools for their handbooks. Right now, there is no policy on the books for high school.
There should be a policy
There
on
isn't.
the books.
There isn't.
Well, it was a policy written on the books because our committee wrote it.
There's a 7160 that says you can have a dress code based on what the superintendent recommends. 7160, it's right here.
I've got 7160.
Yep, and so that is the policy. That's the only policy currently that oversees high schools. There is no specific policy for high schools, and so that's why we decided to kind of tackle this one first, because right now high schools do not have a uniform policy. They have a dress code guidance in their handbook, and so what we're doing is providing providing recommendations for a more open-minded, more progressive view on the dress code dress code.
I would have to understand what type of dress codes we're talking about before I could support something like this,
I believe it may have been sent to you. Did you send it
Yep,
out?
I sent it to everyone.
That, but it was so much information, and I just really am not sure what we're talking about.
Yep.
Are we talking about the kids that can come in and with just about anything on that they want to wear?
It's very specific in this policy. So I could read the whole thing to you, or you could look at it, but it's very specific. If there's in labs, they have to have closed-toed shoes. So there are still very much stipulations around that, but it's also not being able to tell girls that their cleavage is showing and to go put a t-shirt on. Some girls, their cleavage is always showing, and that's something that we're objectifying a girl, and who is policing.
We tell boys not to wear their pants down.
Same thing,
right? So that's not okay?
Correct. Thinking about how we thinking about the individuality of every student to be able to show who they are.
So thank you, Dr. Ryan King, for the report. And I'll also like to thank Mike Murphy, another fellow board member, for being on that committee. And Martha, it's nothing that would be voted on today, but I would definitely recommend reviewing the policy and
I
seeing
reviewed what she sent me, but I was just totally confused.
any thoughts on that. We will get a consensus on that. I, for one, am in support of a new dress code. I am familiar with that policy. I do believe it's equitable and inclusive, and also allows high school students to embrace their identities, creativity, cultures, religion, and ethnicities. So I just wanted to share that. I do look forward to speaking, bringing this back up and seeing if we can get a consensus, albeit if any changes need to be made from there. So, any other reports from board committees?
Building committee
President
meets
Wilson,
tomorrow.
policy will meet Wednesday, the 18th at 3:30.
Wednesday, 18th. I'm sorry, building committee?
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. All right. Nothing else on the agenda. It's 8:06 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting closed. Oh. Does it need to be?